we can pinpoint the exact food needs of a 35-year-old man living in San Francisco and compare this in great detail against the food needs of a 60-year-old woman living in New York City. And we can do this by age, by income, by health, by all kinds of parameters. And so what we can do now, as a result of having access to this data and having an AI layer that floats on top of this, it allows us to talk to the data in such a way that we can go to our clients and say, look, the product you're trying to bring to market needs to have the following attribute, needs to use the following language, and needs to deliver the following, it needs to be the following, needs to fill the following needs for the people we're hope going to buy it.
We're going through something absolutely historic.
Technologies across the board are growing exponentially.
It's a disruption that's going to completely redefine the way businesses compete.
In the next decade, we're going to lose 40% of today's Fortune 500 companies.
The exponential growth of computing is continuing.
AI is nowhere near its full potential.
Whether you like it or not, that the future cannot be stopped by anyone.
Hi there, everyone. Welcome back to the Future Tech and Foresight podcast. I'm your AI host, Mark Verbenkov, and this is episode number 184. In this episode, my guest and I explore how artificial intelligence is beginning to reshape one of the world's oldest and most foundational industries, food and beverage. While AI is often associated with high-tech sectors like software or finance, it's now making a meaningful impact on how we grow, produce, market, and consume food. We look at the unique challenges that small startups face in this space, from scaling operations to predicting shifting consumer demands, and how AI is emerging as a critical tool to level the playing field. We discuss how AI is being used to analyze market data, optimize production workflows, and develop tailored products that align with the needs and preferences of specific audiences. But we also highlight an important theme. AI is not here to replace human expertise, it's here to support it. Human intuition, creativity, and oversight remain essential to making good decisions, especially in an industry so closely tied to culture, identity, and trust. The conversation goes beyond just food, touching on how AI can enhance learning, improve communication, and expand problem-solving capacity across sectors. We reflect on what the next 5 years could hold for industries navigating everything from climate change to supply chain disruptions and geopolitical instability. In a world where efficiency is prized, but uncertainty is rising, this episode unpacks why the real value of AI may lie in its ability to make us more adaptive, more insightful, and more human in how we lead and build. My guest today is Andreas Duess, the CEO of Six Seeds Consulting, where he helps food and beverage brands use AI and data to create products that resonate, develop smarter marketing strategies, and secure meaningful growth. With deep experience at the intersection of AI, consumer behavior, and the food and agriculture sectors, Andreas is a trusted advisor, keynote speaker, and policy contributor. He's a regular speaker at top industry events like the USAG and USA Rice Federation conferences, and contributes to Canadian policy discussions through his role on Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada's Consumer Demand and Market Trends Table. Andreas helps brands compete at a global level, redefining how food businesses innovate, market, and grow.
Hi there, Andreas. Thank you very much for coming onto the podcast. It's great to have you here today to talk about something that I don't think I've brought up on the podcast before, which is kind of AI and the food and beverage industry and how those things are mixed together. So I think it's going to be a unique discussion, and it's great to have you on today to talk about this.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm excited to be here.
Great. Well, the first question that I ask all guests is, how did you get into the work that you do? Was it AI first, and then it brought you into the food and beverage, or was it the other way around? Or was it some very different way that brought you in?
No, it's kind of a roundabout way. So I lived in London in the UK in my early 20s, went to university there, made some money working in restaurant kitchens, and went from a dishwasher to a line cook within a year. You know, it's one of those things that happens in restaurants. And then I started working at a marketing agency, marketing company that specialized in technology only. And we worked for early Google, we worked for Cisco systems, and we also worked for a company called Autonomy. And Autonomy had been founded by a guy called Mike Lynch in Oxford, and this was my first exposure to AI. Autonomy, it had the first computer programs that could take meaning out of context awareness. So if you'd say, I'd say, here's a mic, that could be either Mike the boy or Mike the microphone. And a computer program would be, for the time, clever enough to understand this. So that was a long time ago. And then did this, really, really enjoyed it, did some really interesting work, really got deep into technology. And then I moved to Canada. A girl happened, and I found myself living in Toronto. And
Happens.
it does. And then what happened was that I accidentally started a marketing agency that specialized in food and drink. And it sort of grew from one freelance job. I came over here, was, trying to figure out where I wanted to work and looking for jobs. And then somebody said, hey, can you help us with this branding project for a food company? And that grew. And then all of a sudden, I had built with a partner a company that had 40 employees, offices in Toronto, offices in Montreal, which was a lot of fun. Did some really, really lovely work there. And I've always been interested in food, with my line cook background. I still to this day cook for the people I love. Really enjoy this. And then about 5 years ago, I get a message from a friend of mine, and she says to me, I have something I want to show you that you can't talk about, but I think you'd love it. And that was an early large language model.
Very
And
cool.
it was, it was two things, Mark. It was absolutely awful, and it was very much the future.
Right.
It was both of these things at the same time. And so I went home and I promptly had a panic attack because I could see a future, because I've been working in this industry. I could see a future where when this thing would become good, which is where we are today, it would take over a lot of the work that we were charging our clients money for. And I was, again, I consider myself very lucky throughout my life. I was lucky again that I had an offer to buy this agency of me, or to buy my shares in the agency. It was a good offer, not quite enough to ride off into the sunset, but more than enough to figure out this brave new world and what to do with it. And so I sold the company, and I went from, running a company of 40 people to trying to figure out what to do with my life and getting on my wife's nerves. And what we then did, again, with partners and with people I spoke to, we sort of said, well, what is the most, I wanted to stay in food, but I also wanted to marry this with the new tech that was coming up. And so we started looking for the biggest problem that needed solving. And the problem that we found was that in the food and drink industry in North America, but also in Europe, the failure rate of newly launched products is around 82%.
Oh, wow.
If you're Kraft Heinz, then it's slightly lower. But if you're an independent producer, an independent entrepreneur, it's slightly higher. And so in the US economy alone, this creates an annual loss of $24 billion. And that translates, roughly, these are all estimates, but this translates to around $270 that each grocery buyers in the US per year spends on to prop up products that didn't make it, because the money has to come back from somewhere. Now, if you are a big established food manufacturer, you put these losses somewhere and you pass them on to your consumer. But if you are running a small startup, and let's say you want to bring your Nonna's pasta sauce to market, and the whole thing invariably goes wrong, a lot of people are losing $100, $200, $250,000, and that goes down the drain. And so we started to think, well, how could we solve this issue? How could we solve this problem? And in the age of AI, as you and your listeners are aware, good data wins. And so the very first thing was, we looked at the data that was available on the market, data that we could have access to. And so we started building a data lake. And that data lake includes data from retailers. So that's coming in, and it's not Nielsen data, it's credit card data, it's data from food delivery services. So it's a whole bunch of different data sources. We have data coming in from food service, so we know what people are buying in restaurants, when they're buying it, how often they're buying it, at what cost, at what price. We have data from home use coming in, so we know what people are cooking at home. One source of that is smart fridges, for example, so we know what people are buying, how long it's in the fridge, where it's coming in, and this entire thing then gets cross-referenced against the public conversation on social media, magazines, etc., etc. And what this allows us to do, we can pinpoint the exact food needs of a 35-year-old man living in San Francisco and compare this in great detail against the food needs of a 60-year-old woman living in New York City. And we can do this by age, by income, by health, by all kinds of parameters. And so what we can do now, as a result of having access to this data and having an AI layer that floats on top of this, it allows us to talk to the data in such a way that we can go to our clients and say, look, the product you're trying to bring to market needs to have the following attribute, needs to use the following language, and needs to deliver the following, it needs to be the following, needs to fill the following needs for the people we're hope going to buy it. So we are not a data house. We don't sell raw data. We have the agreements we have prohibit us from reselling that data, neither would we want to do it. We have our human analysts on top of this, and we work with our clients to then make that data useful. And just to give you an example of what that should look like, currently we're helping 3 companies developing products specifically for Ozempic patients.
Interesting.
Right? Because
Yeah.
Ozempic, I'm sure you know, Ozempic GLP-1 drugs is the first weight loss drug ever that doesn't rely on willpower. And the projections are that by the end of, I think it's the end of next year, around 28% of Americans will be on Ozempic or will have been on Ozempic. So that's a massive market.
That's huge. I didn't know it was that big. Yeah.
Yeah. So that gives you an idea where we can say, all right, what really matters to these people. And the reason why it's important to do this with observed data like we do is because when you ask people, they will lie in your face with the best possible intentions. But, especially on social media, we know this is everybody's highly curated A-roll that people are showing on social media, whereas, the reality is often very different.
Right. Very interesting. Okay, a lot of
long story there. Sorry about that.
No, it's good. It kind of gives the full picture, right? I think usually in the podcast we would go through each of those. One question that I had for you is, so you were talking about the advice that you're giving these food companies, and you're talking about the language, and so to me it sounds like you're able to kind of craft an entire, I don't want to say narrative, but like, are you able to give all the advice about what a product needs, like ingredients, marketing from your background, coloring on the not on the food, but on the labels, like the branding choice, like is all of that information able to be given to your clients from the data and from the analysis that the AI is doing?
So the analysis that we're getting from the AI underpins an awful lot of what we're doing. So, but for example, when it goes to let's use the Ozempic for a second. So currently we're working with a rice company. That rice company is interested in putting a product to market that's lower in carb, high in fiber, and they want to market it to people who are on GLP-1 drugs. So we understand that GLP-1 patients have a need for high protein, high fiber, high nutrient density foods. And we take that information together with more information, what's important from a flavor perspective, etc. And we then use a food scientist and say, look, here are the needs we've identified. Now, we're not food scientists. We don't know which fiber we can add to rice without changing the flavor. We don't know if it's soluble. We don't know if it's non-soluble. We want to make sure it doesn't affect the flavor. It doesn't affect the mouthfeel. We work with that. We work with experts. But we tell these experts what we're shooting for. and what we're trying to do. So when it comes to marketing, that's something we deal with in-house. We have the knowledge to do this. When it comes to new product development, we take people to a point where we're saying, we have the data, we have the insight, we have the analysis that this is the kind of product that will sell in market. Now, can you please use your talents, your knowledge, your specialist knowledge to work with us to make this happen? And what we're finding, interestingly enough, more and more food scientists, more and more people who look formulation, they use AI tools of their own, where they have massive databases of ingredients and they know exactly how they interact and how they work with each other. And so we speed up a process that used to take a year, perhaps 2 years, and we make this process happen in 3 months. And we make that process happen much quicker, much faster, much more, and much more relevant.
Very interesting. Yeah, super interesting. Maybe just one step back to kind of give us a little bit of a juxtaposition between what you're doing now, and I'm sure that there's going to be other companies that are going to do something similar, and how things were done in the past, which I think is always useful for these kinds of discussions. How did food and beverage companies create new products in the past? Like, what was the process? Was it a lot of guesswork? It was, maybe some surveys of general people, or they would have their own data based on the products that they're selling now. What else am I missing here?
No, all of the above,
Yeah.
right? And it depends on the company. I mean, I have spoken to so many people in food companies, and there is like a common thread when they come to me and they say, Mondays are innovation meetings, and I dread them with every fiber of my being.
Really?
Right?
Okay.
Because I have to come up with new ideas, and everybody uses the same, everybody Googles, everybody reads the same trend reports, everybody, everybody goes out and does the same thing, and nobody ever knows what's saying. We have a working relationship with a chef, and I can't tell you that person's name, but world famous restaurant empire, huge content creation part of what they do. And until last year, 90% of the ideation for content came directly from that person
Right.
and was driving not just the chef nuts, but the entire team as well. Because there was just so much of a burden on that person and everything, and he didn't always get it right.
Sure.
Right? So now, about a year ago, they switched to data, similar data that we are using, and the liberation that has happened is just absolutely massive because there's this entire workflow has changed internally for them because now there is an element of we know rather than we hope.
Right. Super interesting. And I guess this is something that's going to be happening with a lot of these other businesses that are, not just creating content, but creating these products. There's, rather than there being, Googling of different kind of tech trends and maybe a bit of guesswork, there's a little bit more, how you would say, stability, sure footing when you go into creating a new product.
Yeah,
Right? That's gonna work,
absolutely.
yeah.
It's if I'm going into a new product, and traditionally my product has been, if you're a small food entrepreneur, like this whole thing, it depends on the size and it depends on the resources, right? But if you're a small food entrepreneur and you wish to, honor your family's culinary history, you wish to honor your grandmother's special pasta sauce or taco recipe, then the vast majority of food businesses like this get founded on passion and hope. The passion for the product, the passion for the emotion that's powering the product, and they hope like hell that there are enough people out there that will buy this product. The food industry and the CPG industry is incredibly unforgiving to beginners making mistakes. And I'm going to say something that's going to get me in trouble, but it is the truth. There are a lot of people who will prey on the unprepared and they will take their money. take money for branding, they'll take money for packaging, they take money for brokerage services, they take money for production. And all of a sudden, a lot of people have spent $150,000, $200,000 who have no business having a business because they're entering a saturated market with an undifferentiated product that doesn't earn the margins they need to earn. Right? And that's just heartbreaking because for a lot of people, not just dreams die, but financial stability dies. And we've seen this firsthand happening.
Sure.
People sell them the dream. And specifically right now, we seem to be living in a time where the dream of entrepreneurship is something that many, many, many people chase. I'm a food entrepreneur, and it's sexy and it's fun.
It really is. Yeah, it's
right.
I don't want to say it's like the new rock star status, but it's certainly something that society, however it happened, is pushing this as the valuable thing that you want to be doing with, like, it's not getting a high paying, job in, I don't know, pharmaceuticals or oil and gas or, even Silicon Valley anymore. It's you need to be an entrepreneur. You need to be your own man or own woman or whatever, and that is what society values now. And if you're saying that these people are being taken advantage of in the food and beverage industry, I mean, it's sad.
Yeah, absolutely, right. And so what you see when you talk to people, if I take you in a room with 10 food and beverage entrepreneurs who are candid and open, 9 of them can't wait to get out of the business. Right? Because they're not making any money. It is a constant battle with retailers. It's a constant battle with co-manufacturers. It's a constant battle with financial stability. There are 2 or 3 who will make an absolute runaway success out of it. There are brands like, what's the water brand that everybody's talking about? It'll come to me, water in aluminum cans. They are.
Oh, like bubbly or something like that, maybe?
Oh,
Like the
it's not
sparkling?
bubbly.
No.
It's they have like a little skull and crossbone on the can. It'll come to me in a
Oh,
minute.
okay.
But they have turned this into a close to billion-dollar brand, and they've been super successful. But in my own sort of circle of people I know, there are at least 4 or 5 people who started CPG brands, started food and drink brands, and these are business savvy people. Right? These are people who understand business, who had a career, perhaps a financial career before, who were running companies, who had an element of not knowing how business works, and they still can't make it work. Right? And then they sell for debt, or they get rid of it, or they just close it down, depending on how much money they've lost on it. And AI and data can really help you. So first of all, it can help you to stop. It can help you to figure out if you actually have a business.
Right.
Right? Let's look at the data. The world doesn't need another chocolate chip cookie. But the world might need a chocolate chip cookie that's gluten-free, or it might need one that Ozempic patients can eat, or it might need one that's high in fiber. So, it can allow you, data and AI can help you figure out those particular niches. And if you are a bigger client, so if you run a bigger company, if you have like 10 million in sales, even there, innovation is frequently difficult because at that size, you don't necessarily have the resources to have an innovation department. You may not have the time to invest in data and AI. You may buy Nielsen every now and then, but holy moly, is that expensive. So you might not do that as often as you would like to do. And quite frankly, you're running a business and you got things to do. And so every first Monday of the month, you have an innovation business and everybody comes in there frazzled and frightened. And, really nothing much happened as a result of this. And again, that's something we see over and over again. And again, if you're working, not trying to self-promotional, you can do this yourself. But if you have decent data, and if you then use AI to analyze this data and work with this data, it can make your life an awful lot easier. And you can try things out very quickly and, sort of see if there is an actual business there or if that's something best to be avoided.
Right. So it sounds, whether you're small or large, it's something to optimize your time, make you a little bit more efficient. And the term that just keeps coming up all the time, you become augmented through the use of AI in order to do whatever it is that you're focused on. I do like this idea of maybe minimizing risk for these small entrepreneurs, right? As a small entrepreneur myself, I mean, there's just risk all around all the time, right? It's the business is constantly on a knife's edge. It's exciting, but it's terrifying at the same time. And I'm sure that in the food and beverage industry, which I am not very well connected to, as you laid out, it's the risks are significantly higher if there's these like larger players that are preying on the small guys all the time. And I love this idea of being able to utilize AI to augment yourself in order to, bring your product to market maybe faster, but also at a much more relevant, I don't know, presentation, or you just make your product a little bit more relevant, therefore giving your chance to succeed, or increasing your chance to succeed, I would say.
Are you familiar with the expression luck surface area?
Luck surface area. No, I haven't come across that term.
Yeah, so there is this expression that I use quite a lot, and I didn't come up with it. But the second I heard it, I immediately really liked it. So there is this expression, this idea that you can, there's the definition for luck. For say, preparation meets opportunity, right? That's when luck happens. And then the first time I heard about the idea of a luck surface area, it is that you can increase the surface area on which luck can happen in your life and in your business. So, for example, me being a guest on podcast, that increases my luck surface area. Hopefully somebody who listens to this is like, hey, that's an interesting guy. I want to talk to him, and perhaps I want to give him some business.
Exactly.
Right? You running a podcast for your own business, that increases your luck surface area, right? To go out and say, well, let's try this. Let's put this little seed in the ground. Let's do all these things. Everything you do, it increases the potential for luck to happen in your life. Now, AI is a wonderful tool to increase your luck surface area because AI allows you to do more things and try out more things and do them quicker and more affordably. So one of the main reasons why I am such a proponent of AI I just happen to focus on food, but I think this is true universally in business. If you're using AI to do more things, try more things, explore more things, follow more what ifs, then you give the opportunity to be luckier in business and get better results.
I love that. Yeah. This, I would say, is a trend that I see through the other podcast discussions that I've been having with other guests in obviously many different types of industries. And again, it kind of goes to this augmenting of the human, whether it's an employee or a CEO, you can just do so much more. Like I personally, I've got a bunch of screens here, and I've got ChatGPT kind of permanently up here, and I use it minimum 10 times a day up to, 60, 70 times a day. Sometimes, the maximum gets reached and I got to wait a little while, but it's, sometimes something that would take 3 hours can get done in 10 minutes. And then it's like, oh, well, I've got all this time freed up to go and, increase the surface area of luck happening for me in my business. Okay. So this is interesting, exciting, and positive, right, Andreas? Which is, I think, what most people that are pushing AI talk about. But there's also the whole other side of the coin, which is the risks, which is the potential, negative impacts that are happening. I'm thinking, and I kind of want to open the question to kind of whatever you see, but when I'm thinking about food and beverage and using AI to create more relevant products, my mind also goes to, well, are you then able to get enough data to potentially manipulate consumers into buying your product when, it might not be relevant, but you market it in such a way? That's one thing that initially comes off the top of my head, but I'm sure there's other things, and I'd be more than happy to hear you explain those away.
I don't think that is that much of a problem because the way we work and the way when you use data and AI to create products that people really want. You're really focusing on people's needs, right? And you are delivering against their needs and against the things that will make their life better. Where things go wrong, and where I see people coming back and saying AI sucks, right? It's just not working for us, is when people outsource their why to an AI. So, we use two different words. We use the word sense making and we use the word meaning making. And meaning making is, I want to start a food company to honor my grandmother's heritage, and I'm going to sell her, I don't know, pierogies, for want of a better product, right? That's meaning making. And that is the emotional part of humanity, that specifically when it comes to food, because food is love. It's such an important thing to do. Food is full of emotion and belonging and, humanity. And then you use sense making, which is the AI, to let us look at the pierogi market. Who buys pierogies? How often do they buy them? What are they looking for in pierogies? What ingredients can we do? Is there anything we can do to modernize them, to talk to consumers today? But when you outsource your why and you say, well, come up with a food product that I can sell, then you get something mediocre in the middle of the road. So I think for me, strangely enough, if you want to be successful, and I think this is not just in food, but in general, if you want to be successful using AI, the people who will be the most successful, the people who will get the most out of this, are the people who are the most aware of their humanity. Yeah, I've got kids that are a couple of years away from university. And I'm strongly recommending to every single one of them is like, study the humanities, study languages, study philosophy, perhaps, throw some religious studies in there, figure out how that works. Because I think those parts of studying and of what's going on in the world will become increasingly important in the next 10, 20 years. With all of the things that AI can't take care of as we speak, and probably won't do for quite a long time.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. When I was back in university, it was learn how to code, right? Because then you can get a great job. And now, from well, I guess the reality is a little bit up in the air, but there's certainly some people that are saying, coding will go away over the next couple of years, as you can just kind of tell your AI model, your LLM, to be, prepare this kind of product or prepare this kind of code. I need this kind of system. Build it for me in the next, 5 seconds, then we can iterate on it. Yeah.
Well, I don't know about you, but I tried. Yeah, I'm not a coder.
Mm.
I have an understanding of how code works, but I'm not a coder. And just for my own personal entertainment, I now frequently build little tools that I may only just need for an afternoon. And they never really, like, my coding friends scoff,
Sure,
and look at them and say, that's just nonsense. But again, I'm sort of old enough just where I saw digital tape taking over from film when we shot commercials in the olden days. And I remember people scoffing about digital. We all know how that went, and we now shoot 4K on our iPhones or on our Pixels or whatever with, huge image stabilization that wasn't even possible, all these years ago. So I wouldn't scoff. I do think coding will become, in many a way, something that most people will be able to access. And I think our entire interactions with with computers, with machines, is about to change.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but I talk to ChatGPT all the time these days.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm responsible in my company. I write the newsletters, and I do this primarily because it gives me an opportunity to think stuff through, and I like this. But I was coming out of an event a couple of nights ago. It was a beautiful night, so I decided to walk home. And one of the speakers at the event had said something that really resonated with me. So I put my headphones in, was about an hour's walk to get home. Put my headphones in, fired up ChatGPT, and I said, look, this speaker just said the following thing, really resonated with me, I think would make a great newsletter. Can you find me some data that supports the following thought process that I'm going to add to this? And by the time I got home, I had a fully fledged newsletter skeleton there that just needed a little bit of fixing up and writing. And for me, as somebody who uses AI to run my own business as well as support the business of our clients, this interactions where AI becomes part of your everyday, you call it augmentation, this everyday augmentation, this expansion of what is possible. That for me is the most magical part of what we're seeing right now.
Yeah, and I don't know the proper term here for it, but the more natural way in which we are doing this, right? Like keyboard, mouse, it's a little bit awkward when you actually think about it, right? It's not super natural to be using it. Now, you do it enough times, you do it 1,000 times, it becomes a little bit more natural. But the way that we interact with people is by speaking, is by pointing. And not to get too sci-fi here, but I think Marvel did a great job with Iron Man in the way in which you want to be interacting with your computer systems and your various AI. And I think we're still a couple of ways away from having Jarvis, right? But I think we're moving into that direction with voice with ChatGPT and these other kinds of programs that are being built right now.
It's like not to move away too far from a food conversation, but my oldest son is dyslexic. And so reading and writing will always be difficult for him. He's fantastically intelligent, super creative, all that kind of stuff. But for him at school, what was a massive game changer is Notebook LM. Because what we do now, we load his schoolwork, we load everything he gets from school, presentations, what have you. We load this into a notebook, change it into a podcast. He listens to the podcast, and he immediately. And I have a custom prompt that we tried, since you can now sort of direct the podcast. We have a little custom prompt that basically sort of says, "Look, don't forget anything, list everything," and we tell the two presenters what they need to do. And it has been an absolute game changer for him because it allows him to interact with really complex material in a way that makes sense to him. And then, I taught him how to sort of say, he had tests, for example. I upload, so he uploads all his school material, and then I say, test me on this. And you can run your own tests in a very safe environment. You can prepare yourself. And I think, just for educational, for the future of education, what a wonderful thing to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Right? You learn at your pace. You learn with an ever patient teacher who is always there for you.
That's the beautiful thing about it. My younger brother's dyslexic as well, and he had a hell of a time with school when he was younger. Just it was impossible. And I'm thinking now about these kinds of AI systems that are out there that would be so beneficial in helping, whether it's education or just making it more conducive to the way in which he would learn, and many other people, whether it's dyslexia or ADD or whatever. No, fascinating. Let's go back to
Yeah, sorry about that.
It's a great segue. It's a great tangent, but we've only got a little bit more time, so I think it's good. Should we more problems that are going to come up with utilizing AI in the food industry? So you mentioned the one where it's meaning versus sense, and I think that's probably a lot larger than just the food industry, but relevant all the same. Are there any other ones that people should be aware of?
So in the food industry, I really, and I'm, I am quite aware of the dark side, the potential dark side of AI. Ranging from job displacement to misinformation and all those kinds of things. Like that, this is not something I'm taking lightly. But in the food industry specifically, I think the opportunity for good very much outweighs the opportunity for bad. And it does this because it allows us to, as food manufacturers and as people in food, it allows us to do an awful lot of things we weren't able to do before. So for a small food entrepreneur, it allows us to give that person the information they need to succeed. So the food industry is highly, it's systemized, like co-packers, people who make your product for you, they have certain margin expectations. Distributors who take your product and then sell it to retailers, they have certain margin expectations. Retailers have margin expectations. So all these things are reasonably well documented. And if something's reasonably well documented, you can feed it into a large language model, and you can give that large language model to an entrepreneur and say, here you go. This large language model will take you by the hand and will stop you from having to learn everything from first principles, right? If you learn everything from first principles, you eat a lot of poisonous berries and, or mushrooms in the food industry. And a lot of those can kill you and can kill your business. So, but if you load it into a large language model, if you put custom data in, it's like there becomes an instant breath of relief because now you're not in this on your own anymore. For larger manufacturers, it really allows you to fulfill the needs of people who perhaps before have been somewhat marginalized. So let's say Ozempic patients, let's say people who live on some restrictive diet of whatever the reason is, whether it's gluten-free or whether it's whatever it may be. And it allows us to create products targeted at these people, especially for these people, that will make their lives better. I stopped drinking alcohol 5 years ago, and it was really just a dry January turned into a dry February, turned into a dry March, and all of a sudden I was like, I haven't drank for 12 months, for 6 months, and I felt better in many different ways. And so I never went back to alcohol, never went back to drinking alcohol. And so for people who don't drink alcohol, there are now an awful lot of alternatives on the market that taste really good, that fulfill exactly the same need of community and ritual, but I don't wake up with a hangover anymore, right? And those kinds of products, AI really shines because we have the ability to say, well, what flavors are important here? What is the ritual that is important? What do we need to do to create an experience that's on par or perhaps even better than the experience of an alcoholic drink? And AI really shines there because AI allows you to explore the what ifs and do this quickly and relatively risk-free. Now, before you get angry emails, I am very, very much aware that this what if takes you to 80% and you still need to have somebody to double check it, especially in food and drink.
Yeah.
Because the AI can take you to a certain point, and I think then there is always the guiding hand of somebody necessary who says, well, now let me make this into a thing that people can love. I think that's really important.
Okay. Well, I think that's relevant from all the discussions I've been having as well. Whether you need to avoid, hallucinations or with ChatGPT and these other LLMs or otherwise, there needs to be that human double check for now. Anyways, we'll see what the next 5 years brings, but for now, that's certainly the case. I see that our time is winding down here, Andreas. With all of these things kind of packaged together, what do you foresee the food and beverage industry turning into, say, over the next 5 years, right? Is it the democratization of businesses so that's going to be mostly dominated by these small entry players that don't need to spend so much and they can cycle up products and businesses quite quickly, relevantly, and make it profitable and successful? Or are these Heinz and other giant food producers going to utilize AI at a much more sophisticated level to get all of the new ideas and essentially wipe out the smaller players? How do you see the future of this forming?
I don't think this is a zero-sum game, and I think the Kraft Heinz and the Nestle's, they have a reason to exist, but also does the small producer who sells at a farmer's market. And I think they can happily coexist in many different ways. One of the things I'm seeing right now, which is really interesting, traditionally, innovation in the food and drink industry has come from successful challenger brands. So somebody starts something and they go vegan or they use monk fruit for sweetener, and they very often through luck in the past found the market large enough to make a success out of this. And then frequently the success story has been that one of the big brands, they swoop in, they buy it for $10 million, somebody sells into the sunset, made a lot of money, and then 1,000 other entrepreneurs sort of, want to do the same thing. What I'm seeing right now, because the big players, they've been investing in AI, they've been investing for data for quite some time. So a lot of innovation that traditionally came from challenger brands is now flowing out of the Nestle's, flowing out of the PepsiCos. And again, sorry to harp on about this, but it's just such an example that is so visible right now. All the products that I've seen entering the market that are specifically for GLP-1 patients, they all come from the big brands. And they shouldn't. There is space there, but the smaller brands just don't have perhaps the financial wherewithal. They don't have that data. So the innovation pendulum has swung very often to the larger brands and then again to the very small brands. And what AI can do, it can allow the large brands to be more innovative and to address an ever more fragmenting market. It's like, again, when I was I'm 52 now, when I was a 22-year-old line cook and we had a dinner party, the deal was I cook, you eat. And now when we have a dinner party, the deal is I'll ask the people who are coming if they have any food sensitivities, if they eat anything, like, what's going on. And then we make it happen because we love our friends. But there are still, the market is far more fragmented than it has ever been. So what AI allows us to do, and where I think this will sort of continue to develop, is that the fragmentation of the market will continue, and that AI and data will help companies to be successful addressing that highly fragmented market. The other thing that's going to happen, climate change is a thing, and it will continue to accelerate. And it doesn't matter what you believe, what your political beliefs are, nature really doesn't care one way or the other. So one thing that I can see happening, that's beginning to happen, is that products we look at as commodities right now will become luxuries. Chocolate is one of them, right? Chocolate prices have increased by, I believe, 800% in the last 2 years. Coffee is another one of those. Coffee prices are spiking right now. Has nothing to do with politics, has nothing to do with who's in power. It has to do with the fact that there is a drought, and the drought was followed by floods, and there isn't enough coffee to go around. And in addition to this, we now have newly affluent middle classes in countries where they previously didn't exist. So they now start drinking coffee because they are mimicking behavior in the air quote Western world, right? So all of these things going to happen, and competition for food will increase. We had two things happening in the last 5-6 decades: increasing food security pretty much because we had the ability to ship food around the world when we needed it to. We had the money in the societies we live in to outbid other people and basically buy stuff and feed our societies. And those things are under threat. They're under threat because Ukraine used to be a major wheat producer. Well, guess what? That's not happening right now. So that's affecting food security in Africa. If the coffee harvest failed in Korea, well, the one in Brazil probably didn't fail. But guess what? Now it's failing in Korea, it's failing in Brazil, and it's failing in Africa. Right? Simultaneously at the same time. So all of these things are coming in. And as a result, what we're seeing companies that are, for example, trying to create chocolate from fava beans. So it's a fermentation process. And I've tried it. And by their own, I don't want to say admission, but by their own estimation, the chocolate they're making, it's good enough for the inside of an M&M, and you wouldn't be able to tell it apart.
Right.
Is it a Belgian chocolate block? No.
Right.
It's not. But 95%, or maybe not 95%, but 85% of the world's chocolate use is industrial chocolate use. It is in candy bars and, where the quality, the high quality of the chocolate may not be that necessary. So, and that's where AI really is going to come into its own and going to help us deliver products that are relevant for a highly fragmented market, and that will help us to overcome shortages as they arise through a variety of reasons, really, whether it's conflict, whether it's climate change, whether it's a growing market.
So interesting. Human ingenuity augmented by AI to solve shortages and other problems. Really, really interesting. Andreas, I think that's our time. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Yeah, super. As I mentioned right at the beginning, I haven't really dug into this topic at all on the podcast, so it was a great pleasure to have you on to share your insights and your knowledge. I have to have you back on again, maybe through some other shortage, and you can talk to us how AI is solving the problems there. So thanks again.
Thanks very much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Right on. Maybe the final thing. Where can people reach out to you and follow your work? Get in touch with you, etc.
I'm really easy to find. I'm on LinkedIn. My messages are open on LinkedIn. My name is Andreas. Last name is Duess. That's Duess. Just type me into LinkedIn. There's only one of me. And as I say, my inbox is open and always interested in connecting with people doing cool stuff.
Perfect. Well, thanks again. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, thanks for listening to this week's Future Tech and Foresight podcast. If you like what you've heard here, there are, of course, a number of ways that you can support the podcast. The best way would be to leave a review on Apple Podcasts or give a rating on Spotify, which you can find a step-by-step explanation for on the futuretechandforesight.com website. Alternatively, feel free to leave a comment either on the episode show notes or the YouTube channel where you can see video recordings of the interviews. And finally, if you are part of an organization that is aware of the disruptive and transformational impact that emerging and future technologies will bring and want to know more, please get in touch to hear about the strategic foresight services that we offer and how we can help future-proof your organization and take advantage of the phenomenal opportunities available to survive and thrive in the future.
A lot of future-shocked people and future-shocked institutions in our society are simply overwhelmed.
Once there is superintelligence, the fate of humanity may depend on what the superintelligence does.
Science fact is catching up to science fiction.
The first truly intelligent machine will be the last invention that humanity needs to make.
The only scarcity that will exist in the future is that which we decide to create ourselves as humans.
Within a 10-year design revolution, we can have all humanity living the highest standard of living anybody's ever known.
Progress is accelerating at an exponential pace, and it's going to reach a point where progress is so fast it's going to be a singularity.
We are probably one of the last generations of Homo sapiens.
Every single headline points to the birth pangs of a Type 1 civilization.